Hey, what's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be a few new things for the channel. I'm going to be 3D modeling some robotic legs. I finally set up my airbrush. I'm going to be using that the first time, doing some proper salt chipping. So stick around if you want to see a really cool build come together. Over the past 2 years or so, I've been doing these head-to-head challenge builds with other customizers and artists. And basically what that entails is we both choose the same starting diecast car, usually Hot Wheels, could be Matchbox, and we have a theme or a rule, some kind of constraints, and we take that and we run with it. When we're both finished, we reveal what we were working on with each other, and we also post it on the Gaslands UK Facebook group to get some feedback on who's the quote-unquote winner. Of course, it's all in good fun. This time, Matt Reeve and I decided to use the VW Beetle, it's casting from Hot Wheels, and our rule or theme this time was that we would both have to 3D model and 3D print our own robot leg design to make this into a walker. So right off the bat, this was going to be a challenge. Now, I'm not an expert in 3D modeling, I'm barely a novice, but I have watched a few YouTube videos. A really great channel for Blender, which is the program I'm using right now, is Artisans of Vol. He has some really comprehensive tutorials on his channel and a focus on designing for 3D printing. So if you're interested in using Blender and getting into 3D modeling, especially hard surface modeling, I would check out his channel. I'll link it up here in the card. Basically, my approach is to block out shapes in cubes and cylinders, squish them and scale them in different ways, and just add some detail here and there. If you're not familiar with Blender, it's one of the most popular 3D modeling softwares out there right now, and it's completely free, so you can go and download it and mess around as much as you want. I know some other people also use Tinkercad, which is a web browser based application, or Fusion 360. And I've used Fusion 360 in the past for hard surface modeling, and it's a great program, but after a year, I think, of a free trial, it becomes quite expensive. So for my uses, I'd like to learn how to use Blender a bit more, and I want to start doing some more organic sculpting as well, and you can do that in Blender. Another good thing about Blender is that there's a ton of tutorial videos on YouTube or other websites showing you tricks and tips on how to do pretty much anything you want to do in Blender. As far as the 3D file for these legs goes, because I know the question will be asked, I'm still not 100% confident in my modeling ability for 3D printing, but I will upload these files to my Patreon, so if you're on my Patreon, you'll be able to download these and try to print them yourself. If watching me digitally make something is not your thing, feel free to skip ahead to the physical modeling portion of this video around the 5.5 minute point. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy watching these legs take shape. So once that was done, I was able to export this as an STL, import it into my slicer that I use, which is Lychee, and print these things out on my Anycubic Photon Mono. And I'm not sponsored by any of these manufacturers that I'm listing. I'm just adding the names here so that you'll know what I'm working with. And I wouldn't even really recommend an Anycubic printer. I think Elegoo has better customer support, at least as an outsider looking in from Anycubic side of things. Anyway, once these things were printed, it was time to see how they were going to go with this car. The first thing that was going to happen is this thing is going to have to get chopped up. I like the curve of these wheel wells in the back, but we're going to need to cut out a panel. So let's go ahead and do that. If you want to get into die-cast modification, you're going to need to get a jeweler's saw if you want to do any kind of cutting. It is really unparalleled in what you can do with it. I also cut off the front quarter panels and filed that all down. You can see that this is starting to form a kind of beak. So for the underside of the car, I took one of those juice pouch spouts and a paper straw, and I was able to chop down the interior of the car to fit all those together in a really nice, tight little package. Some super glue reinforced with baking soda will give it a nice solid joint there. And I used some of these plastic cabochon stickers, along with some ABS tubing. I think this is 8mm in diameter, and by beveling the end of this tube I was able to attach that to the legs, and later this will allow me to glue it to those cabochons. Now recently I found some sanding mesh that's even smaller. This is 240 grit, even smaller than what I usually use, and I glued that into the windshield spot. And next I took some styrene rod. This is 1mm hex rod. And I started to add some more detail and supports to what would be the body of the car. Wicking away super glue with a Q-tip. And moving along, I built a roll cage for the rear of the car, though this is almost invisible in any of the videos or pictures I take. It does, however, show up pretty nicely in person when you handle the final build. Now, taking some of these resin cast exhaust bits from Autokill, I selected one for the rear exhaust. I just needed a little bit of something sticking out of the end of this car, and it kind of completes the silhouette, at least in that portion of the vehicle. Next I had this bit left over from the interior of a Hot Wheels car, and I was able to chop off this fan looking greebly. Using styrene sheet I was able to fill in the underside. And I cut out a comb shape from cardstock, and I started working on a beak as well. If you haven't been able to tell from the thumbnail of this video or the title, this is a chicken walker. Now, if you're not familiar with what a chicken walker is, you've probably seen Star Wars, and you probably know what an AT-ST is. These have been referred to as chicken walkers due to their two-leg design, reminiscent of a chicken. And I figured, why not go full chicken? So after adding some 3D printed guns on the front and starting to block out this silhouette on the bottom, I needed to fill this gap between that spray bottle top and the Hot Wheels interior piece. So I'm going to do that with cables. And without solidly filling in that area, it still gives the illusion that there's something bridging that gap. And speaking of bridging gaps, I'm using EVA foam and superglue to fill up these unsightly gaps, which works really great. Now I do apologize for the terrible filming conditions of my spray booth. I still need to figure out this area. This is me using my airbrush for the first time. I did undercoat these with brown and orange and black in different mixtures to give a rusty undercoat for the salt chipping. And by spraying some water through my airbrush, I was able to stick the salt on. And after that had dried, I gave the legs a nice spray of yellow. I went ahead and did some salt masking on the car body as well, spraying the comb a nice bright red color here. And the body of the car is going to get a white. Now for this kind of build, it was really good to keep the white kind of uneven and patchy. And the reason being, once the salt comes off of this, it's going to be really rusty and the paint is going to be all kinds of chipped. Like these legs here, you can see that salt effect. Came out pretty cool. We're still going to weather over this, so it'll be a bit more pronounced, but as a base coat, this is looking pretty good. However, for the body of the car, I thought that the salt chipping on the white was a bit too minimal. So I went ahead and put some water on a Q-tip and rubbed off large portions of the white paint. This allowed me to get a really beat up look, and I think it adds a lot of character to the build. We can't have the robotic legs being all yellow, so I took some metallic silver, just some cheap craft paint, and I hit some of the pistons of the legs and dry brushed over a couple features of the car. And of course I painted the exhaust, as well as dry brushed over the black in different areas of the undercarriage. Using some Typhus Corrosion, which is a textured paint, I added some muddy weathering to the base of these feet. And once that was done, I took a Tamiya panel liner. This is an enamel based product, and I gave the machinery of these legs a nice good coat of that. And in weathering the white body here, I was adding an orangish brown color to give it a nice dusty, dirty, rusty appearance. And I think it came out just right. Really pleased with the effect that I was able to get from the salt chipping combined with this weathering step. Putting it all together, you can see it start to take shape. Now this will be glued shut, and like I said, you can't see much on the inside. But with the legs done and the body done, all that was left was to glue it together and have ourselves a chicken walker. Really pleased with the way this build came out, and I can't wait to see what Matt Reeve has in store for his portion of this build off. I want to give a huge thanks to my Patreon supporters. In the Sensei tier, Jimmy G. In the Scratch Builders tier, we have Andrew Price, Michael Doherty, Spaghetti a la Mode, and Harker. And my dollar store enablers are Gerald, Sean White, and Jimmy Dane. Thank you so much for supporting my craft. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, stick around for more awesome content, and I will see you on the next build.